Hi there. Welcome to Zoom a Scientist. My name is Catherine Boyk. I'm with the Vermont Rural Water Association. Thanks for joining us today. This is our first Zoom a Scientist, so bear with us if things don't go perfectly smoothly. I want to give a big thank you to Lake Champlain Sea Grant at UVM. They originally came up with the Zoom a Scientist idea and were very gracious in letting us copy them and giving us some assistance along the way. And for those who don't know, this week is Drinking Water Week. So we're excited to be kicking off this week. We would normally be hosting a field trip in conjunction with Drinking Water Week, but since that can't happen this year, we're excited to be doing some online programming. So we have quite a variety of things available on our website that you can do anytime. And then we're also doing this Zoom a Scientist series on Wednesdays all month. I know we've got a fair number of folks joining us on Zoom and some others joining us on YouTube Live. If you guys wouldn't mind using the chat feature on Zoom or the comment box on YouTube to just let us know how many people are at your computer. That'll be helpful for us in tracking this and reporting it for our grants. So, a few things about using Zoom. We are enabling both the chat box and the Q&A feature. So you guys are welcome to ask questions or add your thoughts throughout the presentation. We do ask though that you stay on topic and be respectful. We have an audience of all ages, so we really want this to be a positive, inclusive session. And I do know that we have some other water experts joining us. So if you guys have anything you would like to chime in, feel free to type into the chat box, or you can use the raise hand feature and I'll unmute your microphone if you want to speak up. We're also using the polling feature in Zoom. So if you're in Zoom, you want to make sure you have your pop-up blocker disabled so that you can see those polls. If you're watching us on YouTube, you won't be able to see the polling, but you'll still be able to respond using the comment box in YouTube. And you can also ask your questions through the comment box. And we have Tim monitoring the YouTube stream, so he will let us know of anything that you type into that comment box. And just want to give a plug for our upcoming sessions. Next Wednesday, we will be talking about stormwater and wastewater with Chelsea from the town of Essex. On Wednesday, the 20th, we'll be looking at more about drinking water and private wells with the Vermont Department of Health. And on May 27th, we'll be with Megan from the Burlington Water Resources Department. All of those are happening at noon. And you can sign up on our webpage. That link is at the bottom of your screen, vtruralwater.org/education. And Lake Champlain Sea Grant is doing a ton of these Zoom a Scientist sessions. So they've already done quite a number, and they're continuing Tuesdays and Fridays for all of May and June. Theirs also happen at noon. And their link is on this page if you wanna check out those. And I know they have the recordings from all the past ones posted on YouTube. So this week we are going to focus on drinking water in Vermont. And Liz Royer, our Executive Director of the Vermont Rural Water Association, is going to be giving this presentation. So I will turn it over to her right now.
Thank you, Catherine. Like Catherine mentioned, this is our first try at this, so we apologize if there's any technical issues, but please speak up in the chat or in the comments if there's anything we can do to make this a better experience for you. So I wanted to start with kind of a story. I was thinking back of about my childhood and drinking water in my childhood. And what kind of stuck out to me is that I remember my friends didn't want to come over to my house and spend the night because they didn't want to brush their teeth using the drinking water at my parents' house. And that was due to the amount of sulfur in the water. It tasted like rotten eggs. And then I was also thinking, I don't really ever remember drinking water as I was growing up. I don't know why that was, probably partially because the water didn't taste very good at my house. But then I was also thinking, you know, my son is 14 months old and he already has 5 water bottles. So it's definitely been a cultural shift, I think, in the last, 30 years or 40 years or so. I'm gonna reveal my age. But we definitely drink way more water than we used to, which is great. But I also think there's been a movement towards drinking bottled water and other products versus tap water. So we'll get into that a little bit more, and we'll do some polls about that later. So thank you everybody for being here. I know we have a variety of ages, so I will try to do my best to speak to all ages. But again, please speak up and ask questions if anything is confusing. So I just wanted to talk for a minute about who we are. We are the Vermont Rural Water Association. We are a nonprofit organization. We have 11 employees. We're working across the state. We provide support for public drinking water and wastewater treatment systems. And by doing that, we help promote public health and clean water protection through technical assistance, training, and outreach. Like Catherine mentioned, this is Vermont and also National Drinking Water Week. Unfortunately, the fair would be held normally on Friday this year of the first Friday of May in Vermont. But it's been canceled because of COVID this year. And unfortunately last year it was also canceled because of thunderstorms. So the National Drinking Water Week theme this year is there when you need it, which is pretty appropriate for our situation right now. And our Vermont theme was water sustains blank, fill in the blank. So we had a poster contest and we chose our winners earlier this year. You can go to our Vermont Rural Water website to see those winners. But this was one of my favorite posters, that water sustains life and Champ. So for those of you who may not be in Vermont, we have our famous lake monster Champ, who lives in Lake Champlain. So Catherine, if you can pop up our first poll, do you drink bottled water? So for those of you on Zoom, if you can go ahead and answer that question. I'm just curious about our audience here. All right, so we don't have anybody who drinks it all of the time, and 83% of you never drink it. So thank you, the drinking water industry of Vermont. Thanks you for drinking tap water. So I was looking up some statistics last night, and it was pretty shocking to me that Americans spend $20 billion per year on bottled water. Again, that's in the last 20 years or so. That there's been a huge increase in the amount of people drinking bottled water and spending a lot of money on bottled water. I actually did some stats. This is from a couple of years ago when I spoke to the legislature. So I had looked in the State House cafeteria and saw that they had Dasani bottled water for sale there. I used their prices and priced out if everybody drank 8 cups of water per day, which is the recommended amount, buying Dasani bottled water from the Vermont State House, that would cost each person $1,800 per year. And then I called the city of Montpelier, I called their water treatment plant, and I asked them to price out what it would cost for that same amount of water. And it was $1.55 per year. So if you're drinking tap water, you're spending $1.55 per year. And if you're drinking bottled water, that skyrockets to $1,800 per year. Here in Vermont, we have many different sources of drinking water. We have groundwater sources, so that comes from our aquifers, which are often bedrock aquifers. We also have what are considered sand and gravel aquifers, so that would be along rivers. That's kind of has a natural type of filtration happening there. A lot of people also at their homes and public water systems have used springs or dug wells. So that is literally like a well that is dug with a shovel or a backhoe that's fairly shallow. And then some of our bigger water systems use Lake Champlain. We also have some of our larger cities that use impoundments on streams. Places like Montpelier have Berlin Pond as their water source. We also have a few places that use quarries, old quarries that have been filled with water, or artificial reservoirs. So Catherine, if you can put up our next poll question, where does your drinking water come from? And you're all pretty smart today. Everybody knows where it comes from. So it looks like pretty evenly split between bedrock wells and Lake Champlain on this side of the state. Certainly our larger cities, most of Chittenden County and Burlington have Lake Champlain water sources. And then outside of the larger cities, most of the smaller towns have bedrock wells, and most folks at their homes, private wells are generally bedrock wells as well. So thanks, everybody. Sorry, my slide is not advancing. Okay. So where do Vermonters get their water? We were just talking about that, and I don't think I asked them that question if you had a private well or a public or served by a public water system. But this is showing that the surface water serve public water systems that use surface water serve about a third of Vermonters. About a third of Vermonters have private wells. That's at their own homes. And then about a third of Vermonters are served by public water systems that have groundwater. So Catherine, if you can put up our next poll question about the source of your drinking water, just getting a little bit more detail, similar to our last question. All right, pretty evenly split with this group. Don't know why my down button stopped working. So public water sources, so those are drinking water systems that serve at least 25 people at least 60 days of year. So that's, you know, places like the big cities we were just talking about, Montpelier, Burlington, Rutland, and town systems that could be much smaller. We work with a community drinking water system up in Bloomfield that has that serves 18 homes. That's still considered a town water system. A lot of schools in Vermont, I believe close to 100 schools in Vermont have a well for their own school. They're not served by a larger town or city municipal water system. There's also places like nursing homes, campgrounds, condo associations, some small housing developments. Those are all considered public drinking water systems, and they have public drinking water sources there. Those are all regulated by the Department of Environmental Conservation and the Drinking Water Program. So the flip side of public is private. So private water sources are those that serve a single home or multifamily homes. And it can also serve places like apartment buildings or condos that have less than 15 units. Also, some neighborhoods, smaller neighborhoods, have less than 15 houses. Those are also considered private water sources. So those would not be regulated by the State Department of Environmental Conservation. Almost all private water sources are groundwater. I know there's a few places where folks have camps on the lake, on different lakes, and they may have surface water that they use, but that requires quite a bit of treatment if you're using surface water to feed a single home. So the Department of Health provides advice and assistance on private water sources. And Sila, who is speaking 2 weeks from today, will be providing a lot of information on private wells, treatment, in-home treatment, that type of thing. And surprisingly enough, we don't really have many testing requirements for private wells in Vermont. Only newly drilled sources, or I believe sources that have been deepened, require specific types of chemical and biological testing. But the Department of Health does recommend that everyone test their well every couple of years. So like I mentioned before, about 1/3 of Vermonters have a private water source. Again, that serves a single home or less than 15 units. That is quite a larger amount than nationally. If we look nationally, only about 10 to 15% of the population is served by a private water source. So if you think about most people living in urban areas, if you think of New York City, Los Angeles, those types of things, Vermont's definitely a more rural state with people more spread out and not so much of those large cities like we see other places in the country. And again, like I mentioned before, about 1/3 of Vermonters drink surface water, and most of that does come from Lake Champlain. That's because Burlington and the Champlain Water District are the largest public water suppliers in the state. There's a lot of information here, but I thought I would just put it all up there and try to explain it a little bit. So it's kind of giving just a further breakdown of some of the numbers that I just talked about. So again, about a little bit more than 1/3 of the folks in the state of Vermont are drinking surface water. And again, the larger percentage of that is from Lake Champlain. Again, this slide is just for Vermont. There are folks in New York and Quebec that also drink water from Lake Champlain. In terms of groundwater systems, that groundwater serves about 62% of Vermonters. So if we're just looking at breakdown by population, you can look at those numbers there as well. And this presentation will be recorded and is being recorded and will be available later if you want to go back and look at any of this information. So for our groundwater sources, we have what's called the Vermont Well Database, and that has over 100,000 records in it. And the Vermont Geological Survey recently undertook a very tedious project, which is improving the locations of all of those wells. So back to the early 1960s, when a well driller went out and drilled a well in somebody's backyard, they would have to submit a map to the state. So at that point, the map was just, a road map, and they would physically put a dot on that map, and they would send it into the state, and then somebody at the state had to look at that dot on the map and figure out where they should put it on their state map. So we've gotten much better since then, and we have things like GPS. So that information is all available online. And like I mentioned, the state geologist's office has been working to correct those well locations. And if you want to take a look for yourself, if you have a well at your house or your neighbor, if you know somebody that has a well and you would like to see more details on that, you can use what's called the Vermont Natural Resources Atlas. This is a a little snapshot from an area of the town of Williston. This is south of 89, north of 89. Most folks are connected to the Williston Water Department, but south of 89, most folks have their own wells. So this is just, if you can see where the yellow circle is, that is showing the information on the left for that well. So it's saying that it's at 1,000 feet deep, and the yield, which is the gallons per minute coming out of that well, is 7.5, which is actually pretty decent for that part of Williston. That's not, they actually don't have the best water yields right around there. So the link is available there, and the Natural Resources Atlas is an amazing website. I would recommend that you check it out. You can look at a ton of different information on there, anything from wildlife to flood zones to information on groundwater. So going back to talk about surface water for a minute, we have Lake Champlain as a drinking water source. And I don't know if Eric Howe is on right now, but this is from the Lake Champlain Basin program. I stole this map from them. I thought it was really well done. And it shows all the different towns and municipalities along the lake that use Lake Champlain as a drinking water source. So like I mentioned before, Vermont has 12 municipal systems that serve about 140,000 people. In New York, there's quite a few, not quite a few less. Because the Plattsburgh, New York, which would be the biggest city on Lake Champlain in New York, has a well field, so they do not use Lake Champlain as a source. And then in Quebec, there is one municipal system, Bedford, that pulls out of the northern end of the Missisquoi Bay. It serves about 3 communities there. And this is just a little more information on Vermont's municipal suppliers. This is the list of all of those public water systems and municipalities that pull out of the lake. There are also some campgrounds, golf courses, and other resorts that use lake water, but these are the municipalities that do. I don't know if we want to pause real quick for questions before I start getting into drinking water treatment. Catherine or Tim, do you have anything right now?
We have not had any asked in Zoom. I don't
think on YouTube either.
Okay.
Other than someone likes the map.
All right, we'll keep going then.
Oh, someone wants the ANR website link in the chat, and I can do that. Give me just a second, and you can keep going, Liz.
Okay. So drinking water treatment, there's definitely a variety of processes and a variety of types of treatment and sizes of treatment for different water systems. So if somewhere like Lake Champlain, if we're pumping water from there, may go through multiple treatments, such as coagulation, sedimentation, filtration, and disinfection. We'll get into all of those in more detail. And then shortly, I will be showing a video from the Champlain Water District. So they'll actually take you on a tour of their facility and talk about some of those types of treatment. For smaller systems, for somewhere like a school, they may just have a cartridge filter, which is the picture that's shown on the left here. And that is kind of just a dense piece of material. The water flows through there and that traps a lot of the dirt. And then in the picture on the right, that is one type of a ultraviolet disinfection system. So that's an ultraviolet light, and that would kill or inactivate, I guess, any type of bacteria or virus that was sent through there. So the cartridge filter would again trap that dirt, and then the ultraviolet light, the bacteria wouldn't be able to hide behind the dirt. So the ultraviolet light is able to inactivate the bacteria. There are some bedrock wells, actually quite a few in Vermont, that don't require any type of treatment. It's if there's some type of natural filtration happening in the ground and through the rocks. Again, we were talking a little bit about the sand and gravel aquifers. That's kind of a natural type of filtration because many public water systems use similar types of sand and gravel as their filtration in their treatment plants. So this is another type of setup that might, a small groundwater system might have a chlorinator setup. So that would be adding something like bleach, a small amount of bleach to the water that would disinfect the water, again, that inactivates or kills some of the viruses and bacteria in the water. And this is just a drawing, a simplified drawing of some of those other processes that I was talking about earlier. So like the coagulation, so that a chemical is added that binds a lot of the dirt together into larger chunks. So that's called floc. So flocculation would be those larger particles being created. And then sedimentation is when those larger particles called floc drop to the bottom of the tank and settle out of the water. And then, like I was just talking about for filtration, sand, gravel, and charcoal. There's many types of sand, gravel, and charcoal that are used, and those can remove anything from dust to parasites to many of the types of chemicals that may be contaminating certain types of water. And finally, generally the last step is called disinfection. And that's what we were talking about with the ultraviolet light. For larger water systems, they usually use chlorine or chloramine, and that is added to kill those parasites, bacteria, viruses, any kind of germs that might have found their way into the drinking water. All right, so bear with me. I'm going to try to go to YouTube. And this is about a 10-minute video that the Champlain Water District just put together for us. This is actually the world premiere of this video. So I hope you all are very excited. And we'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Hi, I'm Mike Barsotti. I'm the Director of Water Quality and Production here at Champlain Water District in South Burlington, Vermont. I welcome you today to our mini tour of our water treatment facility, and where we're going to talk about aspects of water treatment, water production, and also our source water. Thanks for coming by, and here we go. We are located in South Burlington, Vermont. We serve 75,000 people, and we are the largest water supplier in Vermont. I have received questions from students regarding where drinking water comes from and how it's produced. So I'm going to answer those questions, and then we're going to have some of the people some of our professionals here at Champlain Water District show you some of the processes here at the treatment facility and also down at the lake. So one of the questions that I received from students is, where is our water from? Okay, and you can see the picture there in front of you, and our water is from the deep underwater canyon of Shelburne Bay. Shelburne Bay holds 33 billion gallons of water, and it is part of Lake Champlain, which holds 68 trillion gallons of water. This is a very high quality source, and Jim DeSorda is going to discuss this aspect of our supply later on. You can see here that going from left to right, it shows that we have 2 manifolded intakes in Shelburne Bay, our supply of water, that we have 6 pumps at our Edward Blake Lake Water Pump Station, and then the water flows into 2 500,000 gallon storage tanks up here at our treatment facility. It shows the water flowing in to the treatment facility It shows 3 adsorption clarifiers. It shows 8 deep bed filters. It then shows the water going into our filtered water tanks. We have 2 of them, each hold 1 million gallons of water apiece for a total of 2 million gallons. The next question I received is, what is water used for? The district's water is used throughout our service area, north to Milton, Vermont, east to the Jericho Underhill Range facility, and south to Shelburne, Vermont. It's used as potable, what we call potable water supply, and that means drinking water, shower, bathing water, water that's used for personal hygiene, such as hand washing, also in food and beverage production. And also it is used for fire protection in our member municipalities. We produce an average of 9.4 million gallons of water a day, and we serve that water into 19 storage tanks located throughout our service area. And those storage tanks range in size from 2 million gallons and a little smaller within the system. And storage tanks and pumping provide water pressure for all of our important water users and our customers.
Here we are at Red Rocks Park, home to Champlain Water District's Lakewater Pump Station. Around 10 million gallons of water is pumped from here each day. This is the beginning of the treatment process. Our intake is located in the Shelburne Bay, about a half a mile from the pump station, and 75 feet below the surface of the lake. The intake pipe is split at the end into 2 sections.
Hello, my name is Travis. I'm the lead treatment transmission specialist here at Champlain Water District, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to show you around some of our filtration process. As you've probably seen from some of the other slides, water's pumped out of Shelburne Bay and up into some storage tanks in the front of the plant, where gravity feeds through the basement of the plant and into one of 3 absorption clarifiers. These clarifiers remove about 60% of the particulate that's found in the raw water as it enters the plant. After the water passes through those clarifiers, it's going to land on top of one of 8 filters that look like these. These are a mixed media filter. They consist of layers of anthracite, garnet, sand, and gravel. Water passes in through the top, and it's allowed to filter through the media and out through the bottom of the filter. Any one of these filters at any given time are generally filtering between 1 or a little over 2 mgd at a time. These filters generally run for maybe 60 to 70 hours or until some other metrics involved let the operator know that it's time to run a backwash. The backwash process consists of introducing some air to the bottom of the filter to loosen the media, and then pushing water up backwards through the media and into a trough, which then flows out into a settling lagoon behind the plant. We have a filter right now that's in the process of a backwash. So right now, filter's flowing up through this filter, up into the trough, and then out into a settling lagoon.
Hey everyone, it's Joel, and what we have here is a schematic of our distribution system. Now let me explain a little bit about what we're looking at here. The schematic is not based on any kind of geographic scale, but instead it's based solely on elevation. Now, as we can see, there are different lines going all over the place. Those are our water mains. They carry the water from point A to point B. The green circles that are kind of scattered all over the place here, those are our serve systems, what we call our serve systems. Essentially, they are different pressure zones within our distribution system. And these blue tank-looking shapes are our storage tanks, as you might have guessed. Now, keeping these tanks full of water allows the entire system to stay pressurized. Why is this important? Without pressure, no one gets water.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ariel. Hi. I'm a treatment transmission specialist here at Champlain Water District. Water travels from these lake water tanks and through the building, going through the clarifiers, and then through the filters. And from the filters, it gets pumped out to these finished water tanks. We have 2 of those, 1 million gallons each, totaling 2 million gallons. And as we wash the clarifiers and the filters, the water comes out here to our settling lagoons. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Champlain Water District's operations room. This is the midnight shift. This is where we get to monitor and control the water that we're processing and distributing. In our operations room, we've got some of the control panels that help to control the filters, where we can manually adjust if necessary. Notice we do have quite a few computer control panels up and running. Connected to our operations room is a small lab that allows us to verify the information that we are being given through the various remote systems that monitor the water for the chemical feeds. And for the next half hour or so, I'm going to be keeping an eye on our filter that's in wash while I perform some analysis.
Champlain Water District's mission is to produce safe, high-quality water from source to tap. We do this by working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to optimize our supply functions. And again, to find out all the information that you want on this very interesting subject, go to champlainwater.org and just take a look through the website. We appreciate you coming by and learning about water with us today. Thank you.
All right, so hopefully everybody was able to see that. And we're very excited to have that video of Vermont, from a Vermont treatment plant. There's been quite a few tours given online, but nothing in Vermont. And even though that is the largest water treatment facility in Vermont, it's still fairly small in comparison to most of other larger cities in the country. All right, this is a kind of a shorter diagram that touches on wastewater and how that fits into the water cycle. This is an example from Shelburne, Vermont. And again, that Shelburne, Vermont, many homes are served by the Champlain Water District. I'm not going to get into anything to do with wastewater or sewage treatment today, but next week, Chelsea will be here from the Essex Junction Wastewater Treatment Plant, and she can talk about all the details of that with you. I know there was some interest in fluoride, so that is added by some water systems to help prevent tooth decay. Approximately 15% of Vermont community water system fluoridate, including the Champlain Water District. And those 15% of community systems serve about 40% of the state's population. So Catherine, if you can post our last poll question, is your drinking water fluoridated? So fluoridation is actually pretty controversial, and I know there's been a couple of municipalities in Vermont that have had votes in recent years regarding whether to stop or start fluoridating their water systems. So it looks like, I guess we had quite a few people with private wells. So obviously if you have your own well at your house, it's not going to be fluoridated. Oh, PowerPoint. All right. So just getting briefly into some of the potential contaminants that we see in Vermont. We have quite a few naturally occurring contaminants. So things like arsenic, uranium, and radon, those can naturally occur in a lot of the types of rocks. And our geology is kind of allowing some of those chemicals to show up in our drinking water. We also have quite a few human sources. We call that anthropogenic, but for this purpose, we'll say caused by humans, things like nitrates, which can be from septic systems or from manure spreading on fields. It can also be seen in some types of fertilizers, most of which are not used any longer in Vermont. Something like atrazine, which is an herbicide which is used on cornfields. Again, we don't see too much of that in Vermont, but it has shown up in trace amounts in drinking water. And PFOA, which is one of the perfluoridated chemicals. I'll talk about that in a minute. We also have biological contaminants, so things that are naturally occurring can still be considered contaminants. So things like E. coli, which is found in the excrement of warm-blooded mammals that can show up, and also other types of viruses and parasites. Cyanotoxins, we don't have a lot of time to get into that either, but that is toxins that are produced in certain situations by blue-green algae and the blooms that we see in various surface waters around the state. So I did want to make this point. I know there's been some confusion out there that COVID-19 is not transmitted through drinking water. It's not been seen to be transmitted through drinking water anywhere in the world. Our public water systems in Vermont are taking extra precautions currently. Some places have started to chlorinate that don't typically chlorinate, and that is just done to prevent exposure to other pathogens. So folks that have compromised immune systems will have that extra layer of protection in their drinking water. PFAS, I can talk forever about PFAS. So those are the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. We had a couple of incidents around the state. Most people are familiar with what happened in Bennington in the ChemFab plant there. And the amount of, they had very, very high levels of contamination in their groundwater. So some people that had private wells that were contaminated were hooked up to a public water system that had water sourced from outside the town. There's also been a few other places where contamination has been seen in groundwater from PFAS. So due to that situation, the legislature passed a bill last year that required all public drinking water systems in Vermont to monitor for 18 different types of PFAS by December 1st of last year. There were 5 public water systems that were found to have specific types of PFAS over the limit. And those systems are currently undergoing investigations to figure out what the source of that might be. Right now, all of it is fairly unknown. These are such low levels. We're talking about parts per trillion. But PFAS are commonly found in a lot of things that we don't typically think about. A lot of types of food packaging, Gore-Tex, we lower our Gore-Tex in Vermont. Most types of Gore-Tex have certain types of PFAS, nonstick cookware, like Teflon pans, ski wax, that's actually come up a few times in Vermont when kind of looking at some of these water systems that saw fairly high levels of PFAS, but with an unknown source. We've been discussing ski wax. Cosmetics, That was something that was a little scary to me. And firefighting foams, that's when you see the super, super high levels of PFAS, it's generally due to firefighting foams being discharged or used in different drills. The cyanobacteria monitoring, so this is the blue-green algae. We have been monitoring for the past 5 years, all of the 22 public water systems that use water from Lake Champlain. In Vermont, we have not seen any of the cyanotoxins showing up. But in Philipsburg, Quebec, again, that's the northern end of the Missisquoi Bay, they have detected cyanotoxins in their finished water during blooms, and they actually have had to shut down their facility in certain times of year. Infrastructure. So what is infrastructure? This is all of the stuff that is needed to get drinking water from the source, from the well, from Lake Champlain to your tap. So in addition to the treatment facilities, it can also include things like storage tanks and water towers, and all of those things happening under the ground, all of the distribution and transmission pipes. So this is something that I've thought about a couple times recently. So I'm like, you know, when I go back to Ohio or somewhere where it's flatter, you see water towers everywhere. Every town has a water tower. They have photo contests about water towers. They paint them in all different ways. But we don't often see water towers in Vermont. This photo is from the one that's at UVM, but they're pretty few and far between. And that's because we have, our landscape in Vermont has quite a few hills. So most water systems are able to put their storage reservoir or their tank on a hillside. And so that hillside can provide elevation that would typically be provided by a water tower when you have a flatter landscape. So in the next few decades, Vermont's going to need close to $1 billion to repair and replace all of our water infrastructure. The picture on the top here, this is actually from the city of Burlington. This is showing tuberculation, which is kind of the buildup of all of the stuff in the water pipes. And Megan Moyer will be here in 3 Wednesdays. And this is actually her picture. So I'm sure she would be happy to talk about infrastructure and their repair and replacement plans in Burlington in detail then. The bottom photo here is actually a wooden water pipe. This is from the Adirondacks. Wasn't able to find any pictures from Vermont, but I have seen wooden water pipes that have been pulled out of the ground recently in Vermont. So it's one of the reasons we need to think a little bit more about all of that stuff that's happening underneath the ground. And finally, I just wanted to talk quickly about this. We're running out of time. The lead in drinking water in schools. So this testing is happening now. You may have got notification from your school that the sampling took place or that it was scheduled to take place. As of right now, there's close to 9,000 taps have been sampled. About almost 20% of those were above the action level. So when somewhere like a sink or a drinking fountain comes back above the action level, that means the school either needs to take, either remove that fixture or replace it with something that is lead free. So right now the testing is on hold, but it may be something that you are interested in looking up the information for your school to see if it's been tested or if it will be tested. And here is the website where you can look up all of that information for any school or daycare anywhere in Vermont. So that's all I had. And like I mentioned, we have 3 more sessions coming up. The next 3 Wednesdays. These are all really great speakers and some really interesting topics. So I hope you join us again, and I'm happy to answer questions now.
We don't have any questions typed in currently, but if anyone has questions for Liz, go ahead and type them into the chat right now. Tim, do we have any on YouTube?
Nope, nothing on my end.
Somebody have something, come on.
Jessica says thank you. Well, I'm curious how a wooden water pipe works.
Me too.
I imagine they leak a lot.
Yeah, I found this great history website. So if you want to Google it, I can let you know more information on that. But yeah, it was, the resource that was most available, 100, 150 years ago. Some of them actually are in decent shape when they pull them out of the ground. So it's pretty impressive.
All right, I think we can go ahead and call that an end. Thank you, Liz, and everyone who joined us. And we will see you next week.
Oh wait, do we want to ask to put, if everybody can put, if they didn't already put how many people were watching?